Alright guys, new video and another game by Nilssen in Sweden, the Swedish tournament Uppsala Young Champions being played, and her opponent in this game is a young player, almost 2300, 2296, Richard Stalmach. Have to excuse my pronunciation, probably grossly incorrect, but anyways, we'll look at the game. It was a King's Indian defense. Ellen preferring the fianchetto variation with the white pieces. Knight a3, castles, and a6. Often in combination with these moves, a viable plan for black in these structures. Knight c3, discouraging b5 for now. b3, rook b8. Now Ellen played a slightly curious move. She played queen d3. I've drawn up some arrows here for you guys. As you can see, bishop b2 and knight d5 actually are the two most common moves in this position. The knight move being probably the more aggressive one, at least by the look of things, but very often it just ends up in an exchange of knights. But it's at least inviting black to do some exchange operation that involves this double pawn, which of course gives some unbalance to the position, and also an open c file for white, so could be advantageous. Bishop b2 also very standard, very normal move, but it does allow b5 for black. So queen d3 is logical in that way, but black on point played b5 anyways. Ellen, true to her style, she captures the pawn and defends it with a4. Knight a7, sorry, though, wins the pawn back immediately, and now it looks like, at least to my eyes, that black is doing perfectly fine in this position. Might even be slightly better. I'm not sure what the players were thinking here about the evaluation, but an even game is my evaluation of the position. So now queen c2, knight takes, bishop takes on b5, and now Ellen decides to activate her rook along the 7th rank. Rook a7, threatening, of course, the pawn on c7. Knight d5, protecting everything. e4 not possible because the rook is hanging on f1. So rook e1 first, c6, now the pawn is protected. Bishop g5, eyeing this pawn, planning e4, queen b6, threatening the rook, needs to be taken care of. Rook a1, could have played something else here, like maybe queen a2 for example, but rook a1. It does allow a fantastic move, and I'm not sure if you've seen it already. I'm sure you guys have. The players, at least black, missed it. Black played rook e8, which is fine, but not the star move in the position, which is c5, opening up the diagonal for the bishop against the rook on a1, and really creating some problems for white. So that's something you could check at your own convenience by pausing the video, for example. Black played rook f e8. e4, knight retreating to the c4, c7, sorry, and after e5. I think black is still okay, but there's no advantage here. So Ellen has played very well over the last couple of moves, managed to equalize and at least stifle black's initiative and pressure, so that's very good. And after knight d5, queen d2, I'm starting to enjoy white's position. I mean, bishop h6, maybe h4, h5 coming up, and this bishop is not really doing much, and this is not doing much. The knight is sitting pretty on d5 though, but at least white has doubled rooks on the a file, which is at least some advantage. So black decides to at least attempt to exchange a pair of rooks. Probably this is to black's advantage to exchange, because black cannot oppose in the a file because white has doubled rooks. So my preference would probably be something more along the lines of rook a3 or rook a2 to keep this sort of powerhouse of double rooks going in the A file to at least give the impression of having some pressure with the white pieces. Allen's decision to play rook A8 is understandable, but probably too tame, because now black can exchange a pair of rooks and even invite a second one. And now, as we can see, white didn't really make any headway when exchanging these rooks, didn't really profit from this, and should, by all accounts, have kept the rooks on the board. Because the minor pieces that are left, the bishops and the knight, are probably slightly better for black. At least the knight on d5 is very nice, and the bishop on b5 protects the queen side here very nicely. And also white's pawn structure with the isolated pawn on b3 is not a huge asset in this position. So shortly summarized, I would probably prefer black's position here. Queen a5 from Ellen, h6, bishop d2, king h7, black biding his time, h4, and now there's a pawn hanging on e5 in which black grabs immediately with bishop e5, which is well played actually, because not often you are comfortable with exchanging off your fianchettoed bishop like this, but if you win a pawn, why not? At least that's my thinking. Allen's choice here, h5, was probably slightly too aggressive or ambitious, because taking on e5 is probably the best move to get a pair of bishops and have some compensation at least. And if you are really determined, then maybe bishop d5 is also an option here, because queen d5 is forced, queen b4 threatening here, queen e6, queen d4 eyeing up this battery along the diagonal, f6, and now queen e3 secures white, probably a draw even though white is down a pawn. The threat of an exchange of queens can of course be met with something like queen f7, but suddenly queen takes h6 evens out the material imbalance, and white should be more than fine. So this was a possible way to secure a draw, or at least some real compensation. h5 is a bit speculative, probably because g5 is fine for black. Black's king is reasonably safe here, and it's a pawn up for black basically. So, but there's lots of play left, of course. Bishop c7, queen goes back to a1, and suddenly there's all sorts of chaos here. Bishop b6, and this position is probably pretty unclear after h takes g6, but after queen b1, black has a very nice move, a tactic actually. So I'm wondering if you can pause the video if you like, of course, but can you find black's star move, black's tactic in this position? It's not easy. Ellen missed this during the game. Her opponent, Richard, actually managed to spot this little trick, and it is the move queen takes g3. Remember that the queen cannot be captured because there's a pin along the b6 or a7 g1 diagonal. So Ellen forced to, after an exchange here, play queen e1. But remember, even though white is struggling in this position, it doesn't look pretty at all. There's always some resources, always a way to make your opponent think. Ellen finds this immediately by playing queen e6, a very nice move, going for the counter-attack here. Of course, white is not out of the woods here. Black has a very nice resource. Bishop takes f2, king h1, and bishop d4, which is the same idea that black found in the game, but this is a more efficient way of conducting the same idea. Bishop d4 going back to g7 to protect the king, and if knight takes, then the queen will pick up the knight after a check on h4. This is of course very complicated stuff, probably in heavy time trouble as well. Queen e6 was Ellen's 34th move in the game. Black played queen takes f2, which is very natural. Check with the queen, but after king h1 there are no checks. and after bishop d4, suddenly white is the one that's winning. So here black actually manages to make a serious mistake, but the players probably didn't see the win here, because they agreed to a draw after move number 40, queen f7. But I do believe that if Ellen had some more time in this position, she would play on, because there's no real risk here for white actually, because there are no checks available for black in this position. So the fantastic move bishop takes h6 actually wins for white, because the immediate threat of knight g5 mate is hard to stop. Black's move g5 to escape with the king can actually be met by bishop g7. Another fantastic move, threatening all sorts of stuff, amongst others queen h8, and then bishop takes d4, or just bishop d4 immediately, depending on black's answer, of course. But this is a fantastic move. So the threat, of course, or the point being, after bishop takes g7, a knight g5 check, and then the queen is lost on f2. So that was a real possibility, but due to time trouble, I'm sure the players were both pretty happy with the draw. A game with lots of ups and downs, but a very nice save from Ellen Nilssen, securing herself a third consecutive draw against a high-rated opponent in Uppsala Young Champions.